Okay, so I am back, and so I should be able to just wrap this up in this next, hopefully, next 20 minutes or so. We'll be able to go ahead and wrap this up. And I apologize for the interruption. So at some point, either I'm going to start doing this on my computer or something so that I can just, we can have one video and not always have to have it to be like, in two parts or whatever. So anyway, so I was talking about Abraham and really just kind of talking about the journey he had to take and this consciousness that was part of this journey that he was actually taking, and how when we look back at Adam and we see what changed in him, what was in him was then expressed in the world, the pre-flood world. So we know that at some point, the scripture tells us all flesh had corrupted its way. And I said, okay, I'm done with this. So there's, this is irreparable. I'm fixing to just wipe everybody out. But Noah, you found grace in my sight, and I'm going to start again with you. So we see this happen, and then as we come down to Abraham, we see something similar. Not that Yah's wiping everybody out at this point, but again, he's wanting to restore and reestablish in someone his consciousness in the person, in that individual, so that he can have a pathway for his consciousness to be expressed in a nation, and then so that ultimately his kingdom can be established on this earth. So I want to, at this point, go back to the Cultural Background Study Bible. And this time I am going to be reading from the same thing, actually major background issues from the ancient Near East. And like I said, there are about 12 different issues that they address. And most of them have to do with man's relationship to God, how he would have thought about God, what the concept of God or gods would have been, and then how that was different from what Abraham's experience might have been, or how that was different from what Israel's experience was, what Yah required of them, as opposed to the concept of these other gods. So this one is issue 11, and this is identity and community. And it says here, in stark contrast to Westerners who find their main identity in themselves as individuals, in the ancient world, people found their identity in their community. So it wasn't this individualistic, this is who I am, and, I exist apart from everybody else. This is a mindset, to be honest, that I believe, and this is just my opinion, but this is a mindset that I believe that keeps us ineffective because it keeps us separate, because we don't understand Hebraic thought in this whole idea of identity in the context of community and not just only in yourself. So anyway, it was this sort of context that arranged marriages. It was this sort of context that arranged marriages made sense, and levirate marriage would be important. In such a community context, religion was a family choice, not an individual choice. I think that's kind of interesting, because I think we see something like that when Rachel took the gods from her father's house. And this was probably more of a family thing and not just something that was individual. Families worship gods within their family circle, so that a woman who married into another clan naturally adopted the gods of that clan. Now, we saw with Ruth, when she said, your God will be my God and your people my people. So we saw that whole mindset at work in that world, in the world at that time. Legal cases related to clan identities and judgment could target the whole communal group rather than just one individual. We saw that when Achan took the articles that he wasn't supposed to take. And Yah said all these things were supposed to be, dedicated to me, or you're not supposed to take them. I can't remember the exact story, but I do remember that he wasn't supposed to take them. And so in the end, unfortunately, it wasn't just him, but it was his whole house that suffered as a result of the sin that he committed, or the disobedience. Guilt and blessing both operated on a communal level. Israel's perspectives were very much the same. And I wanted to share that because I think that this is something that would have been extremely important to Abraham at the time. And it kind of helps, at least me, to understand a little bit better why Yah would have dealt with him in some of the ways that he did, because Abraham would have had a different understanding. Whereas sometimes we look at Abraham and we just think that, okay, it was just, y'all just speaking to Abraham and, just this individual, and he just kind of saw it as, this individualistic thing. And I don't think that's really the case, because if, at that time, if the thought was that people were, their identity was defined on the basis of, the community of the whole, of a collective body of people, and not just one individual, then we can understand what that would have meant when y'all would have then told Abraham, that your descendants are going to come back here. And as I'm going to get into, that Abraham's heart should have been seen in the context of the nation. And that is how they should have identified, and not just say, for example, just one person, but it would have been the heart of the whole nation. And anybody who was not conforming to the heart of the nation and that expression, that God consciousness, which is what the whole nation should have been expressing, then that person would have been out of alignment and cut off from his people. Because then at that point, when you're not conforming to the identity of the nation, which is why Yah would have established the nation, then you're no longer a part of the nation, because you would have to do that, because that is how the identity of the nation was going to be expressed in the earth. So it does kind of help us to understand then, we're going to now jump into Genesis chapter 12 and the call of Abraham and what it meant when Yah said, I'm going to make your name great. So let's go ahead and jump over to that right now. If you have your Bibles with you, you can go ahead and turn to Genesis chapter 12. That is where I am going to go. Alrighty. And this is where, for me, it got a little interesting here. As I read this one day, and I really kind of started to meditate on what this actually means, because I think a lot of times, as I'm going to get into here, we just get caught up in a name, like, oh, Abraham or Yahushua, or, we just get caught up in a name. And then a lot of times we don't, take that a little further and really understand what it means, what name actually would imply. And so I think before I jump into that, I'm going to read one thing from the Cultural Background Bible, and this does have to do with name, and I think it's pretty powerful. So I just want to take the time and go ahead and read it. If creation is the act of bringing something into existence, we must ask what constituted existence in the ancient world. In our culture, we consider existence to be either material, having molecules, taking up space, and extending to energy and subatomic particles, or experiential, abstractions such as love or time. Those definitions, however, are culturally determined. By contrast, in the ancient world, something existed when it had a function, when it had a role to play. In Mesopotamia, one way to accomplish this was to name something, because a name designated a thing's function or its role. Thus, in the Babylonian creation account, bringing the cosmos into existence begins when on high no name was given in heaven, nor below was the netherworld called by name. When no gods at all had been brought forth, none called by names, none destinies ordained, then were the gods formed. In Egyptian accounts, existence was associated with something having been differentiated. The god Atum is conceptualized as the primordial, a monad, the singularity embodying all the potential of the cosmos, from whom all things were separated and thereby created. The Genesis account includes both of these concepts as God separates and names. The actual Hebrew verb create, bara, also focuses our attention on this direction. In the Bible, only God can perform this action of bringing something into existence. What is even more intriguing is that the object of this verb point consistently toward its connection to functional existence rather than material existence. God creates fire, cloud, destruction, calamity, darkness, righteousness, and purity. This is much like the ancient Near Eastern way of thinking that would be more important to determine who controlled the functions rather than who or what gave something its physical form. In the ancient world, something was created when it was given a function. In the ancient world, the cosmos is less like a machine and more like a kingdom. So I want to stop right there because as we jump into this is going to become important as we jump into Genesis chapter 12, because I'm going to go back, and while I'm not going to use all that information that I read, I think I just overread, so I just decided to keep reading. But I want to bring out something about name, because I think a lot of times we stop at just a name. Like, I would write a name on a sheet of paper, and name goes way further than that. And the implication of name is much greater than that. And there again, when we presuppose with this Greco-Roman mindset that we have, a lot of times we get stuck on a name rather than on the what a name is supposed to actually represent. So in Genesis chapter 12, I'm going to read the first 3 verses, and it says here, "Now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed." Again, that promise, all the families of the earth be blessed. And that's important because we want to understand that the promise was to Abraham and to Abraham's seed, but it was to Abraham and Abraham's seed because of what Yah wanted to do through Abraham and Abraham's seed, not just for them exclusively. So I want to talk a little bit about this whole idea of get out of your country, because we talked about how an identity in the Near Eastern mindset was the identity was determined by the community or by the society in which you lived. So if we think about that, it was like Yah was saying, get out of the place where your identity is defined, where you define who you are, get out of the place that influences how you see your world, get out of the place that influences how you experience life, get out of that country, get out of that culture, because that was one culture and one way of doing things, but that was again based on this fallen consciousness, I'll call it. It was just this lower consciousness, this lesser consciousness, but it wasn't the God conscious. And so because Yah wanted to do what he wanted to restore what was lost in the garden and start that in Abraham, Abraham had to leave. He had to get out of there. And this is a journey, like I said, that all of us must take. It's not just something that Abraham had to take. And we might not leave where we are physically, but certainly to the greater degree of consciousness and the essence of who we are, we certainly do have to leave. If we're going to be part of this new nation, if we're going to be part of this new family, because what Yah was establishing here was a nation, a people, a government. And so he said, get out from your country and you get rid of that culture, because guess what? I'm getting ready to start a new culture. And this culture was going to be based on Torah, as we would see later. And then the other thing I really want to bring out is that I don't want to give the implication that Torah was only when Moses was only given through Moses, because Torah was already in the earth and Abraham already obeyed it. And we know that, let's see here, if I have some notes here that I wrote down because I wanted to make sure. I believe it was, oh my gosh, where did I put that? I believe it was in Genesis chapter 18, or I think it was Genesis chapter 18. Anyway, if you Google it, you can find it, where it talks about how Abraham kept my charge. He kept my laws. He kept my statutes. He kept my commands. What laws, statutes, and commands? The same ones that were given on Mount Sinai to the nation. It's just that now you had a nation that was coming out after hundreds of years. Like they were coming out, a lot of them, it wasn't like they obeyed Yah's law, statutes, and commands when they were there. And a lot of them, all they knew was slavery, all they knew was bondage, all they knew was oppression. So they were kind of acting out of that. They had this whole mentality, which is why it was so easy for them when things got hard to say, well, let's just go back. Let's go back, even though we were crying out under that hard bondage. Let's go back, even though, it was a horrible place to be. That's all they knew. And so before they were going to go into this land and Yah was going to establish this government, they had to know by what laws they were supposed to live. They had to know how they were supposed to live, what was going to govern what they could do and what they could not do, how they related to Yah, how they related to each other, because they couldn't just go into the land any kind of way, because that's what this whole thing was all about. It was why Yah did what he did in Abraham, because of what he wanted to do in the nation and what he wanted to establish on the earth through the nation. Okay, so a lot of times, we can get caught up in a name. And so I want to talk about why and how, why that would be important. And this is partly why Yah said to get out of the place where you're at. You have to leave this country, because then we're going to see where he talked about, I'm going to make your name great. And this was all related to each other. One thing just kind of led to another. It's this whole progression. So after he said, get out of your country, because now it's going to be a new culture, a new society, then I'm going to usher in, and you're going to have a new identity, which is going to be seen in this nation. Then he said, get out from your family, because now I'm creating a new family. This is no longer the family of terror. This is no longer the household of terror. This is now the household of God. This is now the family of Yah. This is now the family of the Most High. And Abraham, you're going to be the progenitor of that. You're going to be the father of that. So you're no longer an extension of Terah's family. Now you're separated from that, and I'm literally starting something brand new. And out of you is going to become this new house, this new family, this new household. And it's that I'm going to accomplish what I want to accomplish in this earth. So he said to get out from your country, get out from your family, get out from your father's house, and unto a land that I'm going to show you, and I will make you a great nation. And I want to stop right there for a minute, because he said, I will make you a great nation. And I know for me personally, in the past, when I've read this passage, I always stop at the physical man. Like, I just stop right there. Like at Abraham, I'm going to make you a great nation. And and I think about, okay, so there was one man, and then, Isaac, and then Jacob. And it was through Jacob that, these tribes came, and then they all went down into Egypt, 70, and then they came out millions of people. And so I would think about that, and somehow or other, I would stop there. But I think the deeper, more profound principle lies a little bit beyond that. So then Yah says here, he says, I'm going to make your name great. And like I said, a lot of times in this Greco-Roman mindset that we have, we think of name as just like a name. But when you really go into what name means, let me see if I have my notes here. When we talk about what name means, name has a lot to do with character, memorial. The Hebrew word is shem. And I don't have my notes here right now, but it's not just static. It's not passive. Name is active. And I think this goes back to what I read earlier, because in Hebraic thought, they didn't just name something just for the purpose of something having a name. Like, for example, this pen. We might just call it a pen, but they would have said something to write with. They recognized it more for its function and what it expressed, what it did, rather than just this thing. And so when we think about, he said, I'm going to make your name great, it was more than just, that's Abraham, yeah, I remember him. No. When Yah said, I'm going to make your name great, I'm going to make your heart great, your devotion to me, your love, your mercy, your way of being in this world, your way of knowing, and all that comes from the God consciousness. That's what I'm going to make great. That's what Yah was talking about. He said, I'm going to make your name great, Abraham. And if you actually ever do a study on that, it is pretty powerful. The word name is actually, it's shem, and it's pretty powerful in Hebraic thought. So it was more than just, I'm going to make a name, as in, say, Abraham. And sometimes we can get when we take Yahushua, we separate the man from the mission, but the name had to do with what he came to express, what he came to show us. And apart from that, we don't even have an understanding of what the name is. So we need to extend our understanding of what Yah meant when he said, Abraham, I'm going to make your name great. And when it comes to understanding that, then that consciousness, what was supposed to be expressed in Abraham, and then Yah says in Genesis, I believe it's chapter 26, I know Abraham that he's going to command his house after him. This thing that I'm doing in Abraham is going to then be expressed in his family. And then what is going to be expressed in the family is going to be expressed in the nation of people. So when he said, I'm going to make your name great, it's what was supposed to be expressed in the nation of Israel. It's what other nations were supposed to come and have a part in and be blessed by when they came in contact with and when they attached themselves to the nation of Israel. And that's what this whole idea of I'm going to make your name great, Abraham. And I'm going to bless those who bless you, and I'm going to curse those who curse you. So it wasn't that he was saying, oh, if you say anything bad about Abraham, I'm going to curse you. Or if you say something good about Abraham, I'm going to bless you. And a lot of people may think about it that way because I don't know that I completely used to understand it. But it wasn't until I started to do a study on this and then, going back to some of the elders, where I attend on Shabbat and some of the teachings they've done that I've began to understand this in a deeper way. So that this God consciousness, this power that Yah would have established in the beginning with Adam, all that he blew into Adam, all that he intended, that's where the power was. That was what was going to, where Yah's power was going to be able to be seen on this earth when he aligned himself with what Yah originally intended. And when he aligned himself with that power from heaven, then that's when we were going to see on earth the thing that Yah intended. And so that's what was blessed. And so when someone came and attached themselves to that, there was a blessing on that. There was a blessing of prosperity. There was a blessing of, we read it in Deuteronomy 28. That blessing was there when someone walked in alignment with the way that Abraham walked. But when they walked contrary to it, which was contrary to the God conscious, now all of a sudden you're walking in a curse. Because now all of a sudden, going back to the garden, this other knowledge base, this other consciousness, and when you walk contrary to that, you're walking contrary to life. And when you walk contrary to life, then you're walking in death. And so then we understand in Deuteronomy chapter 28 what Yah meant. Choose life that you and your seed may live. Because if you don't walk in conjunction with, in this consciousness, this way of being that I established in Abraham, your forefather, then you're going to walk contrary to it. And here's a thought for you. Okay, when you think about where we are today, and you think about how our forefathers, I'm talking about those who went into the land, you might be able to say that in a way, even though they were the seed of Abraham or the descendant, they actually cursed Abraham. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. Because Yah said, those who bless Abraham will be blessed. Those who curse Abraham will be cursed. Those who walk in conjunction with, in agreement with, in alignment with what I'm trying to establish, this heart I'm trying to establish, this consciousness, those people are going to be blessed. So Israel, if you do that, not just this written thing that we think about, but this way of being that would have allowed that to flow out of them. If you walk the way your father Abraham walked, you're going to be blessed. Blessed in the fruit of the womb, blessed in the land. You're going to give. You're not going to borrow. You see all these blessings that are going to come about because you are doing this. But if you walk contrary to this, you're going to die. You're going to be scattered. You're going to be taken into captivity. You're going to be enslaved. He who blesses Abraham will be blessed. He who curses Abraham will be cursed. And I know a lot of people, that might not sit right with a lot of people. But to be honest with you, there's really no other way you can explain it. Because we're here because our forefathers were cursed. And the scripture is very clear that he who blesses Abraham will be blessed, and he who curses Abraham will be cursed. And so it really brings a new concept to what it means to be the seed of Abraham. When Yahushua was kind of having this dialogue back and forth with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and we know that, Historically, a lot of people believe that they were Edomites, but Edom was Esau. But Esau was descended from Abraham because he was Isaac's son. So I'm not saying he was Hebrew, but I am saying that he was descended from Abraham. And I suppose that you might say that because Abraham was Hebrew. So, but in saying that, it's to say that just because you're a descendant of Abraham or even Jacob, what do you think in terms of that actually, just because you're a descendant, does that really make you the seed? And I know that's not going to sit well with a lot of people. But what did Yahushua tell the Pharisees? He said that you are of your father the devil, and his works, like the lust thereof, like his works, those are the works, that's what you're going to do. And if you really were the seed of Abraham, like if he was really your father, you would love me. So now we see that there is this character, this way of being, this way of knowing that comes out of the seed of Abraham. Because when we talk about a seed, like if you give me a seed and you swear it's going to produce an apple tree, and I go plant that thing and I get pears, either you didn't know what you were talking about or you just lied. Because the seed is always going to produce the character of what is in the parent fruit or the parent plant. It's always going to look the same. It's going to produce the same. It can't be anything other than that. And so we get this broader understanding of what it means to be the seed of Abraham and what our purpose is as a people, that if we don't change, we're not going to have a part. And that's why he said, you can look this one up too. I have so many of my notes here and I didn't put this one in front of me, but he said, many are going to come from the west and from, I believe, the east and the west or the something. And many others, and they're going to take their place at the table with Abraham and Isaac. But the sons of the kingdom, the subjects of the kingdom, are going to be cast into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And he said this right in this whole context of this Roman who had come to him for prayer. And he had the faith and said, you know what? You don't even have to come under my house. Just, say the word. And, if you tell, because I tell this one to go and he goes, and that one to come and he comes. And Yahushua says he marveled. And he said, I haven't seen so great a faith even in Israel. Even in the seed of Abraham. I haven't seen that kind of faith. And so then he says, many are going to come from these different places and take their seat in the kingdom at the table with Abraham and Isaac. And so I think as I'm trying to wrap this thing up, because I'm almost at the end of another 30-minute segment here, I want us to begin to think more deeply. Now, for those people who just want to hang out in that space, and that's fine for you, and you just want to say, oh, we're the seed, and, do you want to comment, and you want to, you don't want to go deeper and look at this, that's fine. You can hang out in those spaces, but it doesn't mean that it's going to change the reality. It doesn't mean that just because we are the descendant of Abraham, that doesn't always make somebody the seed of Abraham, because the seed of Abraham has a specific characteristic to it. The seed of Abraham lives like Abraham. The seed of Abraham looks like Abraham. The seed of Abraham brings justice to the earth, brings mercy to the earth. The seed of Abraham is on the way to having that God consciousness. And we saw that when we saw Abraham build these altars. We saw Isaac build altars. We saw Jacob build altars. And even when at one point when he left Laban's house, he said, put away the strange gods from you, because we're going up to Bethel. We're going up to the house of God. And so this idea of an altar is where we begin to shed. It's a place of submission and sacrifice where we began to shed what we are for what it is that Yah is calling us to be. This physical consciousness for this God consciousness. And that is how we express ourselves as the seed of Abraham. Now that, we can be the seed of Abraham physically, but that does not mean that in terms of our expression and our destiny and where we end up, that we're gonna inherit that promise. Because a lot of us are sitting around waiting, saying, Yah's coming, he's going to take us to this land and we're going to go do this and we're going to do that. Not if we don't have his God consciousness. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen for those who lay hold of that and step into this God consciousness. And, it's a hard, for me personally, I said, gosh, this is a hard pill to swallow. But if we really go to the word and study it, we will find that that's true. And the other way to just simply know that that's true, what are we doing here? If just being the seed of Abraham is enough, if just descending from Abraham is enough, why are we here? Why are we in captivity? We're here because our forefathers were disobedient. And they were the seed of Abraham, and they were disobedient. And they got driven out of the land. But Yah told them that in the beginning. It's not because you're so good. It's not because of this and that. If you do what I'm telling you to do, if you walk the way Abraham walked, then you're going to be blessed. If you don't, then you're going to be cursed. We ended up suffering as a result of a curse. And we have to ask ourselves why. So this whole what it means to be the seed of Abraham goes beyond just the man. I'm almost at my time here. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop this. And this time I'm going to stop it and start it again. And I want to stop it the right way. So I'm only going to come back on for probably 10 minutes. Because I just don't think it's going to allow me to do it. So, but in closing this up, I want to just, as I say, may Yah bless you and may he keep you. May he be gracious to you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he give you peace. May he continually protect us as a people, change our hearts, change our minds, so that we can be ready, not just to know that we're the people, but to actually be the people. To not just know that we're the descendant of Abraham, but really understand at a deeper level what it means to be the seed of Abraham. And if we don't have the characteristic of Abraham, then we really have to ask ourselves, are we the seed of Abraham? So I don't know that I have to come back. I think that's it. And so, I'm just going to say shalom. May Yah richly bless you. May he keep you. And we will talk next time. Shalom.